there is some discrepancy here, folks, okay? We can't have 50% of voting age people voting when 90+% of people consider them thieves, pedophile, crooks, scumbags.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Boiling Frogs Post Roundtable. I am your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, and today we are joined, of course, as always, by the BFP founder and editor, Sibel Edmonds in Oregon. We are also joined today by Peter B. Collins in San Francisco, and we are also joined by Wayne Madsen of the Wayne Madsen Report, who I'm sure will be familiar to a lot of listeners and viewers out there, but if not, we will direct you to everyone's respective websites in a moment. First, let's talk about what we are going to be talking about today. For those who have not been following our coverage at BoilingFrogsPost.com about the Dennis Hastert scandal and the cover-up of that scandal, I highly suggest you take a look at the information that's been compiled so far at BoilingFrogsPost.com. And the best place to do that would be the all-in-one encompassing article that has links to all of the coverage that we've done so far, all of the articles, podcasts, and videos that have been done. It's called The People's Campaign, The Real Hastert Case, all in one place. And I will, of course, provide the link to this in the show notes for this video. So wherever you're watching this on YouTube or Boiling Frogs Post or my website, the link will be there to this article so you can go and catch up on the Dennis Hastert case and what it entails. It's a very, very large web. So we have a lot of people here to break it down and discuss what's really going on with this. We're going to start with Wayne Madsen, as he is new to the program, the roundtable here. And Wayne, first of all, can you throw out your website for people?
Oh, it's WayneMadsenReport.com. That's all together. No dashes, hyphens. So it's WayneMadsen report.com.
Excellent. Okay, again, the link to all of our respective websites will be in the show notes as well. So, Wayne, let's start with you talking about this Dennis Hastert case. First of all, how did Hastert come on your radar, and what was it that you were able to uncover about his activities a decade ago?
Well, there were two news streams going on at the time, not at the same time. The first was the Mark Foley scandal. Mark Foley was a Republican congressman from Florida, who resigned after it was discovered that he was engaging in illicit sexual activity with underage male pages in the House. That was not the only scandal. These scandals with House pages seem to have erupted about, give or take a few years, every 10 years. There was one at the end of the 1970s, early 80s. There was another one involving pages and midnight tours of the White House at the latter part of Reagan, the first part of the George H.W. Bush administration. And then we had this Foley scandal coming after that. So, Foley, it wasn't just Foley, because what was going on with Foley is they were covering up for Foley, and one of the cover-up people was the then Speaker, Dennis Hastert, and the Republican leadership. It included guys like New York Congressman Tom Reynolds and their senior staffers. And when Foley got caught, then there was all this, like, it was almost like musical chairs. They were shifting people around, chiefs of staff and senior staffers. And but finally, it caught up with Foley, and he resigned. But at that time, I started hearing about the unusual relationship that Dennis Hastert had with his own chief of staff, and that there was basically sort of a gay mafia that was first tried to protect Foley, and then basically had to throw him to the wolves because he was about ready to bring the whole House of Cards down. And this involved, like I say, this involved people like Tom Reynolds, and one interesting story I got was it was Valentine's Day, and a well-known Washington reporter was flying from Chicago to National Airport in Washington and noticed that Mrs. Hastert, Dennis Hastert's wife, was on the plane. And this reporter inquired, "Oh, you're coming to stay spend Valentine's Day with the speaker. She says, "Oh no, when I go, every time I come to Washington, I'll be at a hotel. My husband, he lives in a townhouse with, the chief of staff, and she indicated they weren't even going to get together on Valentine's Day, which it's anecdotal, but I think gets to the point that, here's Dennis Hastert, who's like sponsoring all kinds of legislation for family values. And that certainly wasn't your normal Ozzie and Harriet relationship there, so that was going on, and then I when this guy John Mark Carr was arrested in Thailand, and he actually admitted that he killed John Benet Ramsey, the girl in Colorado who was like six or seven, and he didn't. And when I went to Southeast Asia, and what I discovered was a huge pedophile network operating out of embassies, including the American embassy. John Mark Carr taught English to young kids, junior high age and younger. And what he was basically doing, and he got caught in a sting by the new military government in Thailand that overthrew the democratically elected prime minister. And the new prime minister was a general who was a Muslim from the South, and he actually had a mandate to crack down on pedophiles. So he put the word out, and the police nabbed John Mark Carr basically in a sting where he was trying to procure kids. So the question was, who's he procuring the kids for? Now, he had a penchant for young girls, but he was procuring these underage girls and boys for visiting VIPs at the American Embassy in Bangkok. And the CIA basically went to Carr and said, look, the only way we're going to get you out of here is you got to plead, you got to say you killed John Benet Ramsey. There's going to be such an outrage in the international media that the Thais won't have any choice but to release you to Boulder, Colorado, to face those charges. If you recall, there was a photograph of John Mark Carr on the flying business class drinking a glass of champagne when he was supposed to be sort of under arrest, being taken back to the United States, and people thought that was outrageous. So he's flown to LAX. The state of Colorado sent an executive jet to pick him up. He goes to Boulder. The district attorney there, Mary Lacey, gets him and says, "Oh, you didn't kill John Benet Ramsey. We got to let you go." And so he's free and clear. Even though there was in Santa Rosa, California, there was a case against him when he was a school teacher of him possessing child pornography. The hard disk containing the evidence somehow walked out of the evidence room in Santa Rosa, and so he's free and clear now. So the whole thing was to get him out of Thailand, because if they got him on a stand in Thailand, it would have been very, very embarrassing for the United States. And I recall talking to a very senior State Department official about this, who had responsibility at the time for human trafficking, including child sex trafficking, who basically said this. You realize that this could not have occurred at the embassy without the involvement of the U.S. ambassador. And I said, well, it did involve the U.S. ambassador. And it wasn't just... So when I started looking at these VIPs, I looked at these congressional delegations called CODELs. Hastert, who used to complain because he was he's very heavy. He was very heavy. He complained about the 2-hour flight from National to Midway in Chicago. But he had no problems on several occasions getting on flights to Hanoi, Bangkok, and Yangon in Myanmar on these CODELs. He also went to Saipan on some of those, and that's, of course, a sweatshop that Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff were involved with. And there was also trafficking of kids there to that U.S. territory, Northern Marianas. So you put the two together. And okay, and then when I go to Chicago, I start saying, well, what do we know about Hastert? What kind of guy is he? He's a Speaker of the House. And then I started hearing from knowledgeable people that when he was a wrestling coach at Yorkville High School back in the late 60s, he was basically let go because of kids coming back and saying there was improper touching going on and other things going on with him as a wrestling coach. And then some an opportunity opened in the Illinois House of Representatives where ex-coach Hastert, ex-teacher Hastert decides, because somebody died, some Republican died, they decide to run him for the House of Representatives in the state of Illinois. He wins, and then there's another opening for the Illinois Senate. He wins that election, and this is how we eventually get Speaker of the House Hastert. Recall, he only became Speaker as a result of another sex scandal, one, pretty mundane. Robert Livingston, who replaced Newt Gingrich after he resigned after he had to admit to infidelity in his marriage, and that was right after they tried to impeach Bill Clinton. So you might say that Hastert had kind of a lucky political career because he should have been caught at many different times, but he kind of snuck through. And I was actually pretty surprised when they indicted him for paying the hush money. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised that he did it. I was surprised that they indicted him for it.
Absolutely. And just to be clear and connect these dots for people, so Dennis Hastert, you're saying, is part of those delegations that were going to Thailand and other places for the child sex trafficking through the embassy.
Yeah, and it was, it was not just that. I mean, you got to look at both what he was doing on congressional delegations, but also what he was doing in the House in a leadership position. Because there was cases involving guys like Jim Colby from Arizona, a Republican. He came out and said he was gay, but there were a very unusual. There was an unusual case where he had taken underage pages to Arizona for like the 4th of July weekend on a camping trip, and that was brought up to the House Ethics Ethics Committee, and every time you saw one of these members of Congress, I got to say, in every case, as far as I know, they were all Republicans, but family value type, because I mentioned Foley. Foley was the head of the caucus on missing and exploited children. I mean, this is how in your face these people get. Hastert was sort of like the person I think they look to, as long as Denny Hastert is a speaker or he's in a senior position in the House leadership, we this sort of underlying network of pederasts had nothing to worry about.
And I will point out once again, just for people, as I pointed out in my video on this subject, you were reporting on this at least as far back as 2006, if not earlier. So, and that's on the record that you were already reporting on this. So this is not new information you're just coming up with after the scandal broke. You were on it a decade ago.
I got to say, when I first reported it, the reaction, of course, from the corporate press in Washington was like, once they stopped laughing, it was like, you got to be kidding. It's shocking sometimes that the corporate press in Washington doesn't seem to get it about these people. But after covering D.C. for as long as I have, some of these journalists go to the same social events that these pederasts go to. So they're worried that it's going to come back to them. I've always suspected them. I know many people, and you see their faces on TV still all the time, would never report it because it's very close to home for them.
And I'd like to add just a little bit about the history, going back to the 1980s.